This is the Sixth Man Show, an Orlando Magic podcast, with your hosts, Kevin Tucker and Jonathan Osborne, covering all things Magic basketball. By fans, for fans. Go Magic! What's going on, Orlando Magic fans? You guys are back with the Sixth Man Show. Today is July 22nd, 2024. Jonathan Osborne here, and joined by new co-host of the Sixth Man Show, Kevin Tucker. What is up, brother?
Hey, a new era begins, here at the Sixth Man Show. It's different, it'll take some getting used to for all of us, myself included. Like, the fact I've been called producer Kevin for 3 years, like, even though I still produce the show, like, am I Kevin now? Like, what?
You're just Kevin. I've been thinking about that.
Yeah.
Like, producer Kevin has just become so synonymous with you. That's going to take some getting used to be fair. I hope you'll give me some grace in that. It's going to take a little bit of time for me to, I still call Kia Amway sometimes. So I've said producer Kevin probably as much as I've said Amway at this point.
It's so funny. But yeah, it's different. But yeah, obviously, if you talk to me on social media, not you, but I'm saying anyone listening to this or running to me at Kia or whatever, you can still call me producer Kevin. That's fine. I still wear it as a badge of honor. I think that's fun. But yeah, excited to be here. Like I said, a new era. We're all kind of figuring this out together, but I'm genuinely excited, obviously get to share this with you and then share this journey that we're, continue to go on with this team with everyone who listens and watches. So yeah, I'm glad to be here.
Hey, aren't you supposed to be like in a hospital bed right now? What's up with that?
So yeah, sort of. I kind of was. Yeah. So if anyone's been following this summer, which by the way, it seems like, as we've kind of talked about this Luke thing over the last several weeks, and understandably so, people that kind of listen at different times during the summer, so a lot of people didn't know that Luke was leaving until last week, even though we did talk about it, back in May. But I understand if people were, upset about the Cavs loss and, you turned us off for a few weeks. But yeah, so for those that don't know, I'm supposed to have pretty major open heart surgery. It was originally scheduled for the first week of July. So yes, by that, I should have been, in a hospital bed last week and all that kind of stuff. But it's been postponed to August 12th. And so not only the surgery's been postponed, the type of surgery's kind of changed. And so I'm actually going to another city. I'm going to Atlanta to have the surgery done on August 12th. So yeah, I'll be around, on the show here for another few weeks. And then I'll be taking, 2 to 4 to 6 episodes off, depending on how long I need after that surgery. But yeah, I'm ready for it. I'd do it tomorrow if the surgeon called me and said they're ready. But yeah, August 12th is the new day now.
We wanted to sort of start the show after we intro into it and provide that quick little update for Kevin. Right after we finished recording the last episode last Wednesday night, like maybe 30 minutes later, the news of Pat Williams passing came out. And instead of going back and just like recording a quick little bit, to talk about Pat Williams passing, you might be hearing that for the first time. Maybe you've been off of social media, the past few days, but co-founder of the Orlando Magic and Orlando Magic icon and giant Pat Williams has passed away last week. And we have a conversation later on in this episode with Jake Chapman, the play-by-play announcer for the Orlando Magic Radio Network, where we talk a little Orlando Magic basketball, but the bulk of that we spent just talking about Pat Williams and remembering Pat Williams and sharing our own personal experiences and our own personal feelings of Pat and what his passing means. So we just wanted to mention that at the top here. It is an incredible, immeasurable loss for the Orlando Magic organization, Central Florida, the city of Orlando, obviously his family, and just Magic fans and people that love Pat Williams everywhere. So we wanted to take just a moment at the top of the show to talk about that. And later in our conversation with Jake Chapman, there's a lot more Pat Williams talk.
Yeah, and you guys we actually just got done with that conversation with Jake just a moment ago. You guys are going to love that. Jake, I didn't realize this until Jake posted on social media after, Pat's passing that he, produced a radio show with Pat for 5 years. Like, that's a long time. And if you guys, know anything about radio, like, you're in a tiny room for a long period of time, especially he said he would, record a bunch of episodes in a row. And so to be able to hear a little bit from Jake, the stories, but also, more accounts of Pat Williams as a person, which, continue to just impress me. And obviously we talk about that with Jake. But anyway, yeah, you guys are going to love that. Definitely stick around to hear Jake talk about that.
Now, we do have some Orlando Magic news. It was reported earlier in the weekend by Jason Beatty of Orlando Sentinel that the Corey Joseph signing, which the Magic made official this weekend as well, it's a 2-year deal, but that the second year of that is a team option. So basically, it's a veteran minimum from what it looks like on Spot Track and the estimates that they have there. And after this year, the Magic will have the ability to sort of reevaluate that deal and see if they want to pick up that second year team option. So again, just another example of Jeff Weltman being a great negotiator and getting good deals to get guys on this roster. The Olympics are starting this week, Kevin. I'm going to be watching a lot of stuff. Like, I love watching the water sports. I love watching diving, all of the swimming competitions. But I'm a big water polo guy. I don't know if you know that about me, but during the Olympics, I love watching water polo. I don't know what it is about the sport. I just find it wildly entertaining. So I'll be watching a lot of the water sports here in the Olympics. But more than anything, I'm going to be paying attention to Olympic basketball. Last summer, we covered the FIBA World Cup. We had Georgia with Goga Bitadze to pay attention to. There was Australia with Joe Ingles. Obviously, there was Germany going with Franz and Mo Wagner. Paolo played for Team USA. So I was waking up at like 3:30 in the morning to come into my office and watch those games and live tweet them. Luke didn't think I could do it, but I did. I think it was like 13 games or something crazy stupid. Like that I watched. It was stupid.
Yeah.
It was stupid. Looking back on it, I would do it again because it was really a lot of fun. I just enjoy international basketball. But this summer, we're really just going to be paying attention to Germany. Obviously, there's the Team USA stuff. Everybody's going to watch that. But speaking specifically about the Magic, we're really going to be tuned into Germany. So if you're wondering, hey, when can I watch those guys? So their first game, they're in Group B. So it's Germany, Japan, France, and Brazil. And the way that the group stage works in the Olympics is that for each win, I believe you get 2 points. A loss is 1 point. If you have a loss by forfeit, you don't get any points. But you play each team in your group once. And then at the end of the group games, the top 2 teams with the most points in each group will advance automatically. And then the 2 best third place teams from the group stage will advance to the quarterfinals. And then all of those games will get mixed up from that point. So basically, we're just rooting for Germany to win, at least 2 of their 3 games in the group stage here. So for Germany, it starts Saturday, July 27th at 7:30 Eastern Time, Germany versus Japan. Then Tuesday, July 30th at 3 p.m. Eastern, they'll play Brazil. And then Friday, August 2nd, they will finish up their group stage games playing France. So
at 3 p.m., by the way, a lot of manageable times there. 7:30, 11:15, and 3 o'clock. Way better than last year.
No 3:30, no 4 a.m., no 5 a.m.
Yeah.
Me and my wife are really going to appreciate that because, of course, my alarm goes off and then she's awake and it's a whole thing. So,
and the only thing I'll add to that is you can see Germany play the United States today. If you're listening to this on Monday, July 22nd, I believe it's 3 p.m. That game tips off Eastern time. That'll be interesting. USA coming off of a wild scare on Saturday against South Sudan. I know you were having an amazing golf trip, which we might need to talk about that in a second. But I was able to watch most of that game. That was crazy. Like, South Sudan probably deserved to win that game. They led for like 85% of the game. USA kind of asserted their dominance at the end of the third and then going to the fourth quarter. And then South Sudan came back again and took the lead with 20 seconds left. LeBron gave the USA the lead with 9 seconds left. And then South Sudan had two great looks to win it. Couldn't do it. But I do want to ask you, Jonathan, before we talk more Magic basketball, there's 2 things we got to talk about really fast. Your golf trip. I want to hear about that. And then also, we teased college football last week, and now it's out, and you've become an addict, and we'll talk about that too. The golf trip. Do you want to sum up your Orlando golf trip? It was in Orlando. Some of the listeners will know some of the courses you played at.
It was. Yeah, no, first of all, I just want to say thank you to Orlando. The city, beautiful, always beautiful. Every time I'm there, the food is fantastic. The people are fantastic. Always a good time. But yeah, this past year, I've become addicted to golf. If anybody follows me on my personal Instagram, you've probably seen all that kind of stuff. And yeah, you just watch these videos of other guys going on golf trips, and I thought it would be a lot of fun. So the past 6 months, I spent coordinating and planning a golf trip for me and some of my closest friends. And yeah, we spent the Thursday night through Sunday afternoon in the Orlando area, various golf trips. shout out to my guy Rich Carbone, who works with the Orlando Magic. I reached out to him. He's a big golfer, and I asked, like, hey, like, what would be your recommendations for golf courses? And he did not miss at all. Every course was immaculate. The conditions, the facilities, the clubhouse, the food, everything was fantastic. But we played Orange County National on Friday. We played the Panther Lake course, easily the most beautiful course I've ever played in. The pro shop, the clubhouse was absolutely unreal. It was like you were in a Bass Pro Shop. Most golf course clubhouses are like as big as my kitchen. This pro shop was the size of my house. Like it was unreal. We had so much fun playing there. And then Saturday we played 36 holes at Dubsdread, who they're celebrating their 100th year anniversary. Since 1924, Dubsdread has been there in Orlando. So that was a ton of fun. We had lunch at the tap room there. That was fantastic. The College Park Burger, if you're ever at the tap room at Dubsdread, that was fantastic. And then we finished this morning at Winter Park Pines. And again, just every course was great. All of the staff at each of those was fun. And we just had a phenomenal time. It was awesome.
I love that. I didn't realize how many were on the trip until I saw you post on Instagram. Like, that's a full house. You had a lot of people.
We're looking to double it next year.
Holy smokes.
We're looking to double it, 16 guys, Ryder Cup style, trying to get a big Airbnb. It's really something that I'm going to look forward to each year with, life skills. Doing podcasts, like, you don't pick up a ton of like real applicable life skills, but like coordinating events and getting all that stuff is something that I have learned through doing this.
Yeah.
And being able to apply that to something outside of this for a change was really refreshing. Like, I almost enjoyed the planning and the thinking about everything almost as much as the trip. So trying to find a destination for next year. I told the guys, like, 361 days until the next trip. We're doing it the same weekend every year. So I'm looking to see where we're going to do that, where we're going to stay, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, it was a good group.
That's awesome. And I know we're going to talk, more stuff here in a second, but we have to talk about College Football 25. We talked about it last week. The game came out last week, and you were on the fence about playing it at all, especially early. And then we got you hooked. This guy, Jonathan Osborne, is an addict now, I'm pretty sure.
Listen, I was never on the fence about playing the game. So I'm not a big college football watcher, right? But like growing up, I played the NCAA football games, like, especially like shortly after, the Tim Tebow Florida Gators. Like, everybody that I went to high school with were Florida Gators fans, and there were Tebow jerseys everywhere.
Sad.
So, I'm sorry. I know that you're not happy to hear that, but Luke's gone, so I've got to stick up for the Gators fans.
No, not anymore.
There.
Let's go.
No,
I have
this
the
is
footage.
Not,
I have the footage.
I can't. Listen, I did do that to make Luke angry once, but I gotta help him out a little bit.
Yeah.
But no. So I wanted to play the game. What I wasn't really sure on is like I was going to pay almost $100 for like advanced access, but I really started to have legitimate FOMO when a lot of these content creators were getting their hands on it earlier, and you were sending us every new like reveal video, so watching all those on YouTube. So the day that like it was the early release was going to be, I made the EA Play account and I got the 10 hours, and I was like, okay, I need something to do, keep me busy while I'm waiting for this golf trip. And like 2 days into it, 10 hours was gone.
Yeah.
It was just gone. And I was sitting there, I'm like, man, do I just not do anything? This is Wednesday. Like, do I not do anything today? And like just, focus on, working, and then in the evening I'll find something to do, before the golf trip. But I was just having so much fun playing this freaking game. They've done just such a great job with it, and good. I know we'll talk about it. But I was like, I'm just going to go ahead and pull the trigger here. And Luke he texted us like Wednesday and was like, oh, did you spend, are you like $20 shorter today? Did you go ahead and upgrade? And I was like, no, because I had never bought the game in the first place. So I was $89.
Yep.
Less in the bank account because I just went ahead and purchased like the deluxe edition so that I could get the early access. And I haven't been able to fire it up, but I can guarantee you as soon as we're done here, I'm going to be firing it up for a little bit.
It is so fun. Like you said, they did such a good job.
The level of detail is just fantastic.
A 10-year wait. I don't want to say it was worth it, but they definitely, made it somewhat worth it. It's awesome. But anyway, I just wanted to ask you about that. I'm having a blast on that game as well. I've played way too many hours this weekend, so I need to get my life back in order this week.
Right now, my North Carolina Tar Heels are 6-1, I believe. I think we're ranked 14th in the country. We just beat 11 ranked Miami. We were at home. It was for recruiting in this game is so brutal. Everybody's already signed everywhere else, but the guys that haven't signed elsewhere, I booked them all for their visit for this Miami game. So my entire recruiting class can't, if we lost, it was all over. I still might not get any of these guys, but it was for sure over if we lost that game. And I got up 20 really early, and they came back, and I think I only pulled it out by 6 or 4 points at the very end. But now I'm going into Syracuse, so we'll see what happens. Like the home field advantage in that game is really something serious.
I think they're gonna tweak it because it is so tough.
You have to nerf it.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
Anyway, I had to ask because I know it's been a lot of fun. A lot of viewers are playing that game too, so it's fun
for sure. Yeah. Well, we do this once a year. We plan on doing this tonight. Again, about once a year, we realize that over the course of the past years, we've picked up new followers and new viewers and new listeners, and a lot of you may not know how the show started. You may not know anything about Kevin and myself. You may not know anything about the Six Man Show and sort of what our mission statement is and why we do what we do. So we figure we take at least a few minutes here to talk about that. Kevin, why don't you start by talking about why you're a Magic fan and
sure,
and
yeah,
sort of how that happened?
This is something I always like to do with other Magic fans when we meet them, right? Like whether it's in our Patreon Zoom calls or whatever, we're always like, what's your Magic story? Because there's not a lot of us like true Magic fans out there. And so like when you find that common ground with someone, it's always so interesting to learn that. So for me, mine is because I grew up in Central Florida. So my family moved to Kissimmee, more specifically, when I was 7 years old. And so that's home for me, Central Florida, and specifically Osceola County. And so, yeah, I lived there for, up until my sophomore year of high school. My family moved back to Virginia. But yeah, those years, like my most formative years, that's why I consider Central Florida home. And so moved there at age 7, which was 1999, which was obviously an interesting time to move to Orlando, kind of in between, the Shaq era and the T-Mac era, honestly, was, just around the corner. And so I got there in 99, and my dad was a big basketball fan. And so obviously he moved to an NBA town, which we hadn't lived in before. And it was like, we got to go check out this, NBA thing. I'd never been to an NBA game. And so to have a team in my backyard was awesome. So how the origin story goes for me, 1999, Orlando Magic at the old Orlando Arena back in the day. I remember everything. 7-year-old me was like blown away. I remember everything. I remember walking up those steps. I remember going through the doors. But before we went through the doors, this was pre 9/11, September 11, 2001, when everything changed, security changed, all that stuff. Before 9/11, there were some games. This will blow young people's minds. There were some games when you got to the doors of what used to be Orlando Arena, like for the first, like when they're just about to open the doors for the first time for the night. Some nights there would be Magic players, actual active players at the door welcoming people when they walked in. Like the weirdest, like handing out programs, like the same kind of programs they hand out today. Magic players standing at the door. So I opened, I was there for when the doors open. I walk in and there is this gigantic dude named Michael Doliak, which to, the random NBA fan, like they're like, who? But to 7-year-old Kevin, that was the coolest person I've ever seen in my life. And so I walk in that door and he's not even big. I think Michael Doliak was like 6'9", which now is like, whatever. I mean, he's still tall, but for 7-year-old me, he was a giant. And I didn't care if he was, an all-star or never played. He was an NBA player. And so we didn't expect that. We had no idea. Like, I was like autograph? Like, let me find, my dad literally had a random piece of paper in his pocket and we got an autograph. And so that was kind of like the first wow moment for me. And so we
do you still have that?
Yes, I do. Somewhere in my Magic stuff over there. It's like this nasty green folded piece of paper. It's got a rusted like staple in the top corner, all that stuff. It's pretty cool. So I got that, and then we go into the game, and like I said, I remember everything: the sights, the sounds, the smells. The bright red chairs, the really sticky concrete steps as you're going up, in the upper bowl and stuff. I remember all that. And so that was how I got hooked on Magic basketball. Like that whole experience was just like literally the coolest thing I'd ever seen or been a part of. And 7-year-old me was like blown away. I don't know if I've ever shared the next part of this story with you, Jonathan. So I was hooked on Magic basketball and all that kind of stuff, but I was also like Michael Doliak was like my idol now. Like he was like the coolest dude. And so my mom, that happened in the fall, early in the season in 99. My birthday's in April. So later that year, my mom like emailed the Magic and was like, hey, can Michael Doliak wish my son a happy birthday? Which is like, the Magic were probably like, you want who? Like, you want him? Okay, fine. So they got Michael Doliak to type up an email. Like Michael Doliak emailed my mom and like, me through my mom and like, hey, Kevin, just want to wish you happy birthday. Thanks so much for support, all that kind of stuff. And so like for my birthday, she gave that to me, my 8th birthday. And it was, again,
I don't want to crush your 8-year-old dream, but what are the odds it was just a Magic staffer?
Oh, very high, very high. Of course they're high, but that's not what, 8-year-old me. And you got to remember, this was like pretty early email. Like email was a thing, but like it was a big deal to get, an email. Me, 8-year-old me, like getting an email from anybody. So anyway, that was cool. And so again, Michael Doliak is always going to be one of my favorite players for that reason. Again, not because of what he did on the court. For those that don't know, he wasn't the greatest player of all time. But he had a decent, NBA career, played for a couple teams. So yeah, that's kind of how it started. And then from there, like I said, I grew up in Central Florida, from all the way to my sophomore year of high school. So elementary, middle, early high school, like that just consumed me. Like I just loved this team. I ended up meeting a fellow like diehard Magic fan when I was in middle school, and like the two of us just like bonded over like this team, and I met more and more Magic fans over time. And then of course,
blue, baby.
What? Okay, yeah, I wasn't gonna say anything. I did have I had another podcast that was way later in life. Before
I listened to it religiously.
Yeah,
back in the day.
That is a fun fact. I did start an Orlando Magic podcast in 2015, I believe it was. We called it the Men in Blue podcast, actually with that same friend from middle school and high school. But that was way later in life. But yeah, and Jonathan
I listened to that religiously, and then like Kevin started producing our episodes, and I think like a number of weeks later, I found out that was you, and I was like, oh my gosh, I freaking loved that pod, and I always sort of wondered what happened to it. And now Kevin's here, so
here I am.
But yeah, Michael Doliak, like, what was he wearing? Was he like ready to hit the floor?
He was in his warm up. Yeah,
that's
they
incredible.
would do that in their warm ups. Yeah. Like they would do like, before the doors open, how they go out there and kind of do like their own like individual workouts and warm ups and stuff. Like they would literally do that and then go to the doors. I don't know how often they did that. I only think I saw it a couple times, early in those early days. But yeah, I mean, I'm really curious if you're listening to this or watching this, let us know in the comments or tweet us or whatever. I'm curious if any of you also had experiences like that where, you got there, his doors open and there was a couple NBA players there. Like that was just crazy to me. I don't know I don't think I ever saw like T-Mac or anything doing that, but anyway, but then outside of that, yeah, I mean, I was there for, the first part of the Dwight era, which was just, I mean, that's where like, if you like something and then it then does that, like that's where talk about an addict. Like I was an addict, like literally, I mean, we talked about this. Like this is sad. I don't share this with everybody, but I share it with the diehards that listen to a Magic podcast in July. I have watched every game since 2004. Like I don't miss, like not necessarily live. Plenty of games I can't watch live, but I will go back and I will watch the entire thing, even if I know we lost by 35. I will force myself, because at this point, it's less about being a fan and more about the streak that I have. Like it's just a weird thing. I'm a loser, but anyway. Yeah, once the Dwight thing happened, like I was just absolutely hooked. And so that was fun. But yeah, that's kind of how things started for me. And ever since, like, it's something I love so much. I love this community so much. Like, it's so special to me. It means a lot. And so as a long answer to the short question, that's kind of how Kevin became a absolute Magic maniac.
Mine is way less exciting and way less cool. I was literally at my best friend's house in like the summer of 2002 or 2003 maybe, and we started playing NBA Live, and he was a Magic fan already, so we were playing like co-op, like on the same team as the Orlando Magic, and like we're doing all this awesome stuff with the guy wearing number 1, and I'm like, who is that? And my best friend Will, who helped start this podcast originally back in 2019, say, "Oh, that's Tracy McGrady." And at that point, I fell in love with Tracy McGrady, which just led me into the Orlando Magic. And I remember Tracy McGrady, being traded in the summer of 2004 and crying when that happened and begging my mom to drive me to the mall and buy me an Orlando Magic Tracy McGrady jersey before they were all gone. And this is like pre-internet shopping days. So like once a player got traded and the jerseys were sold out, they were no more were coming. Like it would have had to have been a Houston Rockets Tracy McGrady jersey, but just I'm very proud of, what was that, 10-year-old me at that time for realizing that you're loyal to the team, not the player. And as much as I love Tracy McGrady, the Orlando Magic at that point were my team, but I wanted to have that jersey to be able to remember, Tracy McGrady's time here. And obviously they were not that great. Dwight's, first couple of years in the league, and I followed them. But then it was my sophomore or junior year in high school where the Magic made the run to the 2009 NBA Finals, and that's what really hooked me, and I've been a diehard Magic fan ever since. But if you've been following this team for either 2 months or the last 10 years, you probably know that they were bad after Dwight Howard was traded in 2012, really until this past season, where things really started to take off. And during that time, like if you really wanted to follow the Magic very closely, you were limited number of options in doing so. And 2019, when the Magic started to go on this magical run in which they won 22 out of their last 31 games and made a very improbable run to the playoffs and won game one against the Toronto Raptors in the 2019 NBA playoffs in the first round. Then they lost the next four. Raptors go on to win the NBA championship. Everybody knows that story. But during that run, my wife had the fantastic idea that I start a Magic podcast so that I could sort of feed this obsession and give me an outlet to talk about the Magic, because she, quite frankly, was probably just sick of being the only person that I could talk to about the Orlando Magic. And it really just started as wanting to give like a fan perspective on the Orlando Magic, somewhere that we are welcomed and enjoy being biased, talking about our favorite team. It started just as that, but it has really just grown into like an entire community centered around Magic fans and bringing them content, bringing them events at which we can all get together and enjoy and celebrate our favorite team. Our mission statement is pretty just upfront, like, hey, we are looking to grow the Orlando Magic fan base in passion, knowledge, and number. We want more diehard Magic fans. We want more Magic fans in general, and we're doing our best to make more knowledgeable Magic fans as we go.
Yeah, it's something we talk about so much, on this show, like the idea of national media, trying to cover all 30 teams and trying to cover all 15 players on those 30 teams and pretending like they know everything. And it's just not possible. Like, it's just not. I don't care if you live and eat and breathe basketball as your full-time job. There's just very few people out there that really know every team, every player, all that kind of stuff. And so, especially being a, quote unquote small market team, that, especially like you said, in 2019, when you started the show, there just weren't a ton of options. And even now, compared to big markets, there still aren't a ton of Orlando Magic content options. But, we thought, when you started it, and the reason why I joined was because, we thought it's really important. Like, it's important that Orlando has coverage of this team, and specifically our niche, like you said, is fan, coverage. Like, we're never going to sit here and pretend like we're basketball experts. We're not analytics experts. We're not cap experts. We're not any of those things. We're not writers. We're not, professional, any of those things. We just love this team. We love this fan base, and we think it deserves a little bit of love. And, and so I think that's kind of why we exist. And I think it's kind of why things have gone the way they've gone. Like, we love this community, and the community loves kind of the community that we've made. And so just, it's all love. It's kind of this, cycle of things that, again, as the team has gotten better, we've been able to expand that, as well. And so, yeah, Jonathan started the show 2019. I came on in 2021. And so we're looking at just over, 3 years and some change that I've been here. Jonathan's been doing this over 5 years. We used to have another guy who was a host for a while back in the day, way back in the day, named Luke. Just kidding. Luke's still our BFF, but he was here for 4 years. That's a
5 minutes ago.
Yeah, up until Wednesday. Now he's here 4 years. That's a long time. That's a long time to to do a show together. And so, like we said at the top, it's a new era for all of us, but definitely excited for it. For the show, for the team, for our fan base, all those kinds of things. It's a new era, and I'm super excited for it.
One more thing that we've mentioned, I feel like throughout this season, but I just want to echo it again, is like some fan bases, you rag on people for having bandwagon fans. We welcome bandwagon fans. Like if you're new to the Orlando Magic, if you're defecting from another team, even that's totally fine. We welcome all new Magic fans. If you've been a fan for 35 years or 35 minutes, we really don't care. If you have a passion and an interest in this team, you are home. Like you are amongst friends here. And I hope every Magic fan will treat newer fans, because as this team gets better, there will be new fans. And we're hoping that just continues, right? You win a couple of titles like we want this organization to do, there's going to be new people around. So just do your best to welcome those people, and don't be a purist just because somebody hasn't been around for 10 years or 25 or 35 years.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's all of us became a fan unless you were here, for all 35 years, which there are people, and that's amazing. But if that's not you, then there was something that attracted you to this team. It could have been proximity. You could have lived in Orlando. It could have been a Team Ack or Dwight or whatever. But what I was going to say was, think about Golden State. Like Golden State has always been popular. Like it's always been like a popular team. It's a larger market and everything. But they weren't this popular until they went on these runs. I'm not saying the Magic are going to go on that run. I'm not saying the Magic are, even if they did, going to become. I
was driving down US 19 in Wiki freaking Watchy the other day.
Wiki-watchy.
And I saw this lady driving with a Warriors license plate frame. I'm like, you're not in San Francisco.
Right.
What are you doing with that? So they are everywhere.
They're everywhere. But what I'm saying is, like, if this team, goes on any kind of championship run, that's the kind of thing that could happen. And so, yeah, fans are going to come on board, and that's going to be cool. Here's where you and I don't know if we'll disagree here. I say if you're a new fan, come on board. We'll welcome you with open arms. But you better stick around. When the cycle happens, which happens in sports, team gets really good, players get old, players leave, whatever, and that cycle comes back down, you best not be bailing to go somewhere else. Like once you get on this wagon, you better stay. And I'm gonna hold people accountable to that. Like if I see you, hanging out with us Magic fans, you're like, yeah, go Magic, go Magic. And in 10 years, if things start to decline, you become, let's say, a Miami fan, I'm gonna call you out for that. That's one thing. I don't mess around with that. I'm a loyal guy, as you can tell. But yeah, join the bandwagon just as long as you're here to stay.
And definitely not Miami. Like,
please no. Please.
That's leaving the Magic fandom is grounds for excommunication. You start rooting for the Heat, then you're dead to me. So
rip.
Well, I mean, we could continue to talk about that, but I think we've got more important things to get to here. But we just every so often it's good to do that. A lot of you listening have probably heard that story 4 or 5 times now. But, there are people that are new to the show each and every season. So we like to do that just so people sort of know what we're about and why we do this. We're going to take a quick break before we get to our interview with Jake Chapman. Want to take a moment to give a special shout out to our Patreons. Those are the folks that help make each and every episode possible by financially supporting the Six Man Show. If you've been a listener for 35 minutes, 35 months, whatever it is, if you want to help financially support the Six Man Show, you can find us at patreon.com/The Six Man Show. We have different levels of benefits. We give a special shout out whenever we have brand new patrons, and we give a special shout out to our Elite and Hall of Fame tier patrons each and every episode. So without further ado, shout out to the Court Cousins, Drew Gooden, Armin Carson, Tulo Ellis, Jonathan Borges, Normal Magic Player History, Gabe Gaines, Wiffle, Michael Martin, Jamel Miller, Michael Salapong, Donkey Punch Dave, Paolo and Francis Warmth, Pierre A., Dylan Holden, Mr. Mikey, Eduardo Sanchez, Danwell, Bobby Skinner, Goody 93, Teddy Sylvia, Doc Lopez, Fuchsia, Bill Fulton, Edmund Lagone, Jose Esquilin, Caleb Pete, Cannibalism, Time, Mr. TV, ESPN Really Sucks, Gear 95 Shred, Junior Bruce, Half Freakin, Shahan 177, Bobby the Don, Himlo, Ben Himro, RM Prop 221, Ray Pastrana, Magic Kid 714, Mysterious Mosley, Irish Magic Mike, Austin Lampy, Random Hustle, Only France, Maria, Keith Walsh, Fritz, Bruv Sal, Cason Green, Santi Leon, Kane Eckler, The Distracted, Mod Sim, Sachansu, Tom Gadsden, Dead Air, Richard Tuttle, Jeremiah Quintero, Magic Wire, Debo 1980, Magic Matt, Michael Thompson, Mama Richmond, Next Napa, What's Up, Play 2024, Dylan Fay, David Duffy, Smith, Sheik, Ship, Sinks, Bueno Time, Stantino 1995, Suggs, Muggs, Daniel Anderson, Barry McElcaney, Will Spivey, and Jay Enrile. A big thank you to all of our patrons. Once again, you can find us at patreon.com/the6man show. And now, without further ado, let's get to our conversation with Orlando Magic Radio Network play-by-play broadcaster Jake Chapman. And now, Magic fans, we are joined by a very special guest, a friend of the program, Magic Radio Network play-by-play announcer Jake Chapman. Jake, welcome back to the show, man. How are you? How's everything going? How have you been?
Gentlemen, I'm good. I'm good. Enjoying the off season. As you guys know, I've got a 14-month-old daughter who I've been chasing around for the last few months. So it has been, I've been resting. I've been getting my R&R, but it's been kind of exhausting. They're long days. So I thought we just had her to bed, but I just heard her scream from the next room. So if you hear yelling, it's normal about this time of night.
Kevin and I are no strangers to that for sure. Just as we were getting ready to jump on here, my kids were screaming like it was the end of the world. But is your little one moving around yet and getting into everything? Have you reached that stage yet?
Yes, yes. And that's been basically since the end of the season. Like since I've been around, she has kind of hit her stride in getting into things. She's absolutely fearless. We have two dogs. I think she thinks she's one of them. And so she sort of takes on their characteristics around the house. So she's flying all over the place. She's getting into everything. You don't realize how dangerous normal things can be until you see them through the eyes of a toddler. So that part, that is one of those things, when you have a child for the first time, everybody says there's no books. Of course, there's plenty of books, but those are the things that you just don't realize is, oh my goodness, I have to make sure the nail clippers are far enough back on the sink to make sure that she can't reach up and grab it, and all of a sudden she's got a weapon in her hands. You learn a little bit every day, and you just kind of try to get through every day, avoiding injury, I guess.
Just survive.
Absolutely. Like Jonathan said,
Advance.
we are both very familiar with that experience. That's hilarious. So as your new offspring was developing all this stuff, the Magic were developing too. How's that little segue? This past
Beautiful.
season, pretty fun. Talk about it from your perspective. I think this was year 2, right, for you, on the mic for the radio network. Kind of talk through this season, kind of your overarching, perspective on this season. And then obviously we'll talk a little more playoffs and stuff, but your first thoughts, Jake, as we look back now, 2 months removed from the season, kind of what were your thoughts on the year?
Yeah, it's fun. You guys have been so nice having me on and sort of documenting for me, kind of professionally, me taking over play by play. I remember talking to you guys and having a similar conversation last year. And in year 2, as far as I went, everything was I was just a lot more comfortable. It just felt like I sort of found my voice and we found our rhythm as far as the network goes. And it coincided with the team sort of finding their rhythm and finding their voice out on the floor as well. So obviously, I mean, we built an identity last year, and we're one of the youngest teams in the league. We're one of the best defensive teams in the league. We've got our coach. We've got our centerpieces. I think obviously the offseason, we can get into that, but if there was any question about who the future of the franchise was going to be alongside Paolo Banchero, I think that was answered resoundingly with the extension for Franz. I think we know who's going to be here. Yeah, there may be some tweaks moving forward, but I covered KCP in Detroit, and that was a few KCPs ago, right? He had the Lakers experience, he had the Denver experience. He's a champion twice over now. But even back then, you knew this is the guy one of the guys that you would want in your locker room. He's going to fit in perfectly. And I think as we enter the offseason, anybody I was talking to, I was trying to temper expectations a little bit because there are a lot of big names thrown about, and we might have been in on those conversations. But no matter what we did, we had to make sure it didn't take away from the development of Paolo and Franz. And I know you guys are on the same page as far as that goes. So I think we made the right moves to complement and accentuate, hopefully get to the next level, but not at the expense of kind of that long-term vision. Jeff Weltman always talks about the North Star being developing the talent within that you've drafted, and that's what's going to have to be. That's what's sustainable. That's how you get to a point where year in and year out you're doing it. And I think we obviously laid the groundwork last season.
Talking about the talent that you've drafted and have cultivated over the course of the last couple of years, you got to see it up close and personal, most of that playoff series. What was most impressive to you about those young guys and stepping up in big moments? Paolo, Franz, Jalen, like just to name a few of those guys.
Yeah, I think, we got some fearless cats, right? I mean, obviously you didn't win a game in Cleveland, but you saw as the season or as the series went on, like their eyes got smaller and they were very comfortable. And obviously the first half of Game 7 illustrated that they took care of business at home, which I think we expected them to do. They were a much better home team all season long. And, they're so young and emotional that I think they play off of that at Kia Center. But, um, we were the more physical team in that series, and we're the younger team in that series. And I thought we were the smarter and more under control team in that series. I think Cleveland won that series because they had home court advantage. They had the best player on the floor, and they had a little bit more experience than we had. So I think it showed that, the moment is not going to be too big for this group, certainly not for Paolo Banchero. And I think there's now a desire for it to get bigger, to get back to that stage and then beyond. You never quite know how young teams are going to respond in their first sort of spotlight series like that. And I think the fact that, you saw in game 1 and 2, there was a little bit of an adjustment period, but as the series went on, it was a couple ball bounces here and there, a couple bad possessions, a couple turnovers, and you could have been playing in the second round. So they were close last year. Now, as everybody keeps saying, it's going to take as much, if not much more work just to get back to 47 wins, to get back to that point. But I think, you've laid the groundwork, and there's no reason to expect for guys not to get much better as we go, just because we are so young.
Jake, I think one of my favorite learning lessons that this team maybe got to experience this past season and then and postseason is that the Magic were just one game out of having home court advantage, right? Like just one game out. And so I wonder about what that does for this young team over the course of a full 82 game season, that now they have this mindset of every game matters. I think they know that at some level, but to see that play out, like one different, loose ball in a game number 47, or a bad game on the road against a bad Charlotte team, down the stretch there. Do you think maybe that could be something that this team draws from that experience? The fact that one game can make all the difference, could have been home court, could have given you that advantage to move to the second round, those kinds of things.
Absolutely. What was it? A game or two, and you're in the play-in scenario, right? A game. It all came down to that last Sunday. And you think about a year ago having the same conversation about the 5-20 start last season, right? You end up recovering from that 5-20 start, or 2 seasons ago now, and you end up missing by a handful of games. So I think these are those tough lessons that you have to sort of go through in order to fully comprehend. But you're right. And I think, Coach Mosley's done a really good job of preaching, like, the game in November is just as important as the game in April. And I think you saw last season, they took that to heart. I mean, obviously, it came out playing some of their best basketball of the season at the beginning of the year. And then the injuries, stuff happens over the course of a season. You have to be able to adapt as you go. But I absolutely would expect, early on this season to see a team that is locked in, and the tricky part is as you approach the All-Star break and the dog days of January, and those are the times where the veteran teams always lock in and are able to make a little bit of headway. And so you got to be, I mean, it can't be, we're going to jump ahead in December and then we're going to coast. It's got to be day to day, game to game. You can't get too high or too low. And I do think, going back to what we talked about with the Cavs series, I think you saw, some pretty impressive maturity from our guys. And so I don't think that message is going over their head at all. I think they'll be locked in, as you said, from the get-go.
Jake, two of the Magic's offseason additions, KCP and Corey Joseph, aside from what those guys bring on the floor, something they bring is championship experience, something that no Magic team has had for the better part of the last decade. What do you think that's going to do for this Magic roster?
Yeah, it's a good question because I think there is we talk about guys like Joe Ingles and Gary Harris and veteran presence, but there is an invaluable sort of clout that comes with cachet that comes with the chip and comes with. I played with Jokic. I've been through the Western Conference. Corey Joseph is one of my favorites because that guy has played and played well in just about every different scenario you can imagine. Good teams, bad teams. He's had a role in all of them. And when you're a guy like Corey Joseph and you last this long and you keep getting jobs, there's a reason. And so I think he's going to be very helpful, and that's really meaningful depth, I think, at a spot that this team could use it. Those guys come in, and I think those days that we're talking about, those random days in the middle of January where, somebody's got a rolled ankle and you're just not feeling it. Those guys know that that's where championship teams separate themselves. Not to mention, as you get into the postseason, it's a different sport almost in the postseason, and it's so long, right? Like being able to pace yourself and play into May and into June and make that kind of run. It's like it's a whole nother season of basketball. And so there are all these little kind of tricks of the trade as the season goes, and making sure that you're conditioned enough, that you're treating your body right, and that, there are ways to kind of shortcut things when you know what's coming. And so thinking defensively, I watch KCP understand Van Gundy, learn where the screens are coming from. And now all of a sudden he's able to kind of shortcut things a little bit. As the season goes on, I think imparting some of that knowledge on the defensive side of the floor, but some of that intangible stuff that you were talking about, I think both those guys will be invaluable for sure. And bringing Gary back, don't underestimate. Like, Gary's always had that voice in the locker room, and I think that level of continuity is good as well. And I think Gary will have a better shooting season than he did last year. I think he never really quite found his rhythm last year. He started out really bad, and his percentages kind of worked their way back up. I think if you can get Gary on the floor consistently, which is a trick, but if you can, I think you'll see him deliver as far as spacing the floor and being a knockdown shooter.
Yeah, Gary definitely has proven that over his career. I'd
Yeah.
like to think last season was an anomaly, but we'll see. Jake, you need to remind me of something. I'm trying to remember back, because Bally didn't broadcast Game 7. Did you get to go and cover and do the call of Game 7 in Cleveland, or was that actually at Kia Center?
So no, yeah, Game 7 was in Cleveland, and yeah, exactly. I actually did Game 5 and Game 7 in Cleveland.
Okay.
Game 5 was because it was kind of a strange, odd story. I had a death in the family. My great aunt, who was 100 years old, passed away, but she was very close with my family, and so I was like, I'm going up there. Like, I'm going to be there. I'm going to this funeral. I can't miss it. And it was literally the day of Game 5, and so and I've been calling the games remotely throughout the season, but it was pretty easy for me to expense the ticket and to call the game from up there. And then Game 7, because there was no Bally, I flew with the team and basically had David Steele's seat. And Jeff did the game with me, which was awesome. And you guys know I'm from Cleveland. I mean, that's one of those experiences that that I never dreamed of having, calling a game in my hometown for the other team in the building. It's still Gund Arena to me, but in one of the buildings where I fell in love with NBA basketball, with JT next to me, who I respect more than just about anybody else. It was pretty awesome. The only thing that would have been better is if we pulled it out.
Yeah, that was kind of why I was asking that, because I know you're a Cleveland guy, and so that must have been just a surreal experience.
It was
But I
crazy.
mean, how was, Cleveland stuff aside, how was the experience? Like a Game 7, not just, obviously for the team, but for you sitting there, you said it was David Steele's seat, and I think that was like courtside there in Cleveland, right?
Well,
Like that had
David
to be.
Steele's seat on the plane. I was still in the normal radio location,
Okay,
so I wasn't
okay.
courtside.
I was like, I don't
David
remember
didn't go on
seeing.
the trip, so basically that was
I gotcha. I
was
was like,
the
I
way
don't
it worked
remember seeing you courtside, but anyway, still being in the building.
it
I mean,
was yeah,
yeah.
it was pretty awesome, and it was funny because I grew up in Cleveland. I will forever defend Cleveland sports fans as some of the purest, loserists. Like, we've been through so much pain that to be a Browns fan specifically, or an Indians, Guardians, and Cavs until 2016, it was just, we were just a special brand of punching bag, I would say, as far as sports fans go, and it really means a lot up there. Dude, Kia Center was rocking just as much as that building was for the first 6 games of that series. And then Game 7, especially in the first half, there was just like very palpable nervousness that I know very well. I can feel it as a Cleveland sports fan. It's what happens, when Baker drops back and an interception's coming, those type vibes. And so, but it got electric, and when they started storming back, and this actually it happened before halftime, if you recall, they got it down to what 10, I think. When it started, you could sort of feel it building. It was like a volcano getting ready to erupt, and that place was rocking. It was, but Kia Center. I mean, I'm telling you, through the first 6 games, from what I experienced in Game 5 there, and certainly Game 6 here, which is unlike anything I've ever seen before or felt before in this city. We were taking it to them as far as the fans go, and all season long. I mean, the Cavs fan base had this sort of nervousness all year about the coach and about Donovan Mitchell's future and all that stuff, and we just had this like pure excitement. Like it was so genuine all season. And guys, like that stuff it doesn't last forever. Now all of a sudden there's going to be expectations moving forward, and so I expect the building to be packed. I expect the energy to be there. But now the fans are going to start getting a little bit greedy. So things can change pretty quickly once you have some expectations. That's where Cleveland was, and I think next year they got a clean slate. They got Donnie back, new coach. I think they'll probably be kind of get their second wind as far as that goes. But it was pretty unique sort of viewing Cleveland sports fans who have always held up here, and here come the Central Floridians punching above their weight class a little bit.
Jake, as much as we love talking Magic basketball and reliving those playoff moments with you, the Magic Orlando Central Florida lost an absolute icon this week. One of the fathers of Orlando Magic basketball, and Pat Williams. And Kevin and I haven't really had the opportunity to even talk amongst ourselves about what Pat meant to us. We just wanted to take some time out of this episode and talk with you, somebody that has spent almost as much time around Pat as anybody, and just get your feelings about Pat, and we can talk about some of the time that you spent together. But how are you doing and processing all of this over the course of the past few days?
Yeah, I appreciate it. And to be clear, I was 5 years old when Pat created the Orlando Magic, and so people like David and Jeff and Alex and Joel, Nick Anderson, those guys certainly, I think, could speak to who Pat Williams was a little bit better than I can. But I did have 5 seasons of producing his radio shows. 2 radio shows, and so every 2 weeks we would have a 4-hour record session in my studio at RDV. And he did a sports show and then like a public interest show, and he would interview authors. And so any new sports book that was coming out, he would get it sent to him. He would read almost every single freaking one of them, which is mind blowing. And then we would interview the author. And then it would be the same thing with sort of public interest stuff. So like, we're talking about it would be Colin Cowherd, getting him on the phone one day, and then the next day it's Wesley Clark, or like politicians, and it was a very sort of interesting cross section because you learned a little bit of everything, and then you learned about sports, which is what we were doing all the time. And I've never met anybody who enjoyed learning more than Pat Williams, and he read all those books, and he was genuinely interested in everything, mainly because he wanted to be able to talk to people about everything. So I put a social media post. I remember it very well. We were interviewing a Jimi Hendrix biographer, and Pat Williams, Jimi Hendrix. Things don't really go. And we got done, and he was like, "Now I can talk about Jimi Hendrix for 5 minutes." Like that was what he saw. He was like, "Just let me know what Jimi Hendrix is all about, and then if I'm at the cocktail party and somebody wants to talk Jimmy, I'll be able to contribute a little bit." Not to mention he adopted, 14 kids and had 17, I think the number was, all in all, marathons, over 100 books written. And then, he was a GM at 29, 83 Sixers, and then the Orlando Magic don't exist if not for him. I mean, it was literally his vision and the work to convince the league, to convince the owners, to get the 10,000 signatures. He's like a PT Barnum type guy. He's one of the greatest sports promoters ever. And it's not just us talking. That's, anybody in the business knows about that. And can back that up. And he was just a special person. Like, we had one of the biggest internship programs in professional sports. That's how a lot of us got our jobs and got down here. I did it. Dante did it. It's just on down the line. And so each year you've got the marketing department has two kids and the communications department has two kids, and they're coming from all over the country. And Pat took the time to talk to every single one of them every season. And then many of them he ended up mentoring. And so Pat, when I left to go work for the Detroit Pistons, he took me out to lunch and he said, Jake, people don't leave Orlando for Detroit. He said, what's the plan? And I was like, I don't know. It's a good job. It's a good opportunity. I'm going to be on air. And he challenged me to eventually be the radio play-by-play guy of the Orlando Magic. And I was like, I can't set goals for like that long down the road. If I'm a podcaster, I'll be happy. If I'm a pre and post game host, I'll be happy. If I'm a producer, I'll be happy. And that was how he thought about things, is like set your goal and then go get it. And I just never met anybody who was as passionate about life and about learning and about achieving and and able to deliver on all of those things. I mean, he was. I think we can talk about um, how curious he was and how many questions he liked to ask and how much time he had for everybody. But you have to be damn good at everything you're doing in order to accomplish all the things that Pat Williams did. So, one of one, man. He was a special, special person, and it kind of caught a lot of us off guard. I mean, I was. This social media post I was telling you about, I was with him when he was diagnosed with multiple myeloma. We had one of those record sessions, and it was like right the same week. And like he was in bad shape, man, and he fought through to finish this recording session, which blew my mind. He had his wife rubbing his back the whole time just to get through a record session for some random radio shows. And I saw him beat blood cancer. And so when I saw Beattie's tweet over the weekend that he was sick, I was just like, it's Pat. Like what's going to kill Pat Williams? Like there's no way. And I didn't think it was this close, and it was this grave. And so it caught me off guard a little bit. And yeah, we lost a giant, man. I mean, none of us are here if not for him. Like there are very few people who alter that much history. And that was Pat Williams.
Yeah, I think for me, it's going to be interesting, first off, to see how the Magic honor him all season long. I can't wait to see the tributes and everything. But for me, like when I walk into Kia Center, coming up in October or whatever, I think I might have that kind of filter, like those glasses, like this was Pat Williams' dream and it's here, right? And so that's super cool. On the big scheme of things, right? We can have 18,000 people here, 41 games a year, all that kind of stuff is really cool. But also to know that he had such a profound impact one on one with so many people, like that to me is like what separates someone like Pat Williams from any other kind of business mogul or whatever. Like guys can be really smart and can build empires, and that's cool. Like if that's what you want to do, that's great. But to be able to do that and also have this, one-to-one relationship with so many people, like I don't know anyone that's ever said anything ill about Pat Williams. Like no one has any stories. Like I don't know of any like skeletons in the closet. Like he was just a great guy. I think that obviously speaks volumes to him. But I think also like when someone like that, when we lose someone like that, it helps me like look at myself and like how am I impacting the people in my sphere, right? Like obviously I'm not going to go out there and start a basketball team that impacts, hundreds of thousands of millions of people or whatever. But how can I impact the people in my own circle maybe a little bit better than I do? So that's just kind of my 2 cents. Again, I didn't know Pat. Obviously, he's had an impact on my life indirectly, but I do know several people that did know him. And so to hear all these things collectively about him, to me, it's super touching and it's really inspiring. Jonathan?
Yeah, I actually got to meet Pat once after a Magic game, and he was gracious enough to come on the pod and speak with me and Luke for a bit a number of years ago. But I was leaving a Magic game and I was going down the escalator, and Pat, like one of the founders of the team, is standing at the bottom of the escalator, like still thanking fans for coming. Like you look around the NBA, you are not going to find that anywhere. And to me, it just speaks to how much this city and the team and the fans, like after all of these years and everything that man gave to this city and to this organization, for him to still be like showing that appreciation and like literally next to it was Amway at the time, but like the Amway exit, like just sitting there thanking people and spent a couple of minutes talking to me and thanking me for coming to the game. And I was able to get a picture with him. And then even the conversation that I had with Luke, just his passion for the sport and the team and again the city and the fans was just always on display. And with all of the success that we're having now as a team, and sure there are a lot of us that have been around for a long time and lived through the last decade, but we're getting new Magic fans that they don't know much about Pat Williams, and we just wanted to take this opportunity to get more fans to know more about Pat Williams. Jake, I wanted to ask you, I know you've already shared a few, but what is like your favorite Pat Williams story?
Oh man. Well, the um the Jimi Hendrix one just stuck out to me because I thought that, what a unique way to look at things. Like Pat Pat wanted to know about something that it wasn't, natural to him or one of his interests, um, in like a transactional way, I think. He saw being able to talk shop with somebody or being able to talk about Jimi Hendrix or be able to talk about politics, but both sides. We talk, Pat and I'm a very cynical person, and so this goes back to what Kevin said. Like I've met very few people who make me want to be a better person, right? In my life, and Pat's one of those people. And Pat and I remember one time. This is a good one. I remember one time we were locked in that room forever, and he's like, "I'm gonna go get lunch. Do you want anything?" And I was like, "No." And I was like, "No, thank you." He's like, "Have you had lunch?" And I was like, "No, but it's all right. We'll be done soon. I'll just go get myself something." He's like, "Let me buy you lunch." And I was like, "No, Pat, I'm good." He goes, "What is this? What is this? You don't accept things? You don't accept gifts?" And he like browbeat me into letting him buy me a turkey sandwich, right? And it made me realize how because it was he called out exactly what it was I did. I naturally turned down not charity, but it's just sort of like my inclination to be like, no, thank you. Right. And he sort of challenged this very fundamental thing about me in this really random moment. And I ended up going home that day and thinking to myself, what is it about my personality that my initial, that I don't say, yes, please, sure, give me something. You know what I mean? That I would turn that down. Um, Pat had a way of breaking things down, of being very succinct. He used to always talk about when we were doing these interviews, and he would ask a 6 word question, and then the author would talk for 15 minutes there, for 5 minutes afterwards. He had a really good way of asking very short, open-ended questions. He had a very good way of reducing things to a simple idea. I remember one time, I remember we were talking about Aaron Kraft. You guys remember Aaron Kraft, the Ohio State guy?
Yep.
He's like my all-time favorite Buckeye. And I was like, you telling me you can't help somebody, you draft him in the second round and you put him on, he's your third string point guard, he makes your starting point guard better. And Pat looks at me and he goes, Jake, how many players in the NBA do you see that look like Aaron Craig? I said, you know what? The point taken, right? Pat had a way of like dropping a bomb in 5 words. Um, he was such a good public speaker. One of the things that I really got into, and these are just stories and sort of random things that are coming to mind. One of the things I got really into via him was leadership and management. And I'm not a manager and I don't consider myself a leader necessarily. It's not any, but it's a very interesting kind of, industry. And I think a lot of the people who consider themselves leadership experts are probably crappy leaders. They just want to teach about something. But Pat was a great leader, and he loved leadership and he loved learning from great leaders. And so most of the books he wrote were about coaches and how, how Nick Saban applies leadership principles, and things like that. And I loved sitting in the room and listening to him interview another leader. and he had a question that he always asked. He would say, "Are leaders born, or are they developed? Is it an innate thing, or can you teach yourself to be a leader?" Um, he would always sort of go back and forth philosophically on that. I just loved listening to him tackle that field because it was one of the few things left at the time that I was spending time with him for him to learn about. And he was really, really passionate about it. He was really passionate about his faith. He was really passionate, obviously, about sports. He was more passionate about baseball, I think, than anything. He was originally a very accomplished baseball player. But when he was getting up into books 100 through 110 or whatever, and the library that he ended up building on his own, one of the last things that he really poured a lot of time into was his leadership library. That was a really interesting kind of, I think, hobby of his, and I really enjoyed listening to him sort of tackle that world.
Yeah, I think going back to kind of something Jonathan said, talk about this next generation, the present or next generation, maybe not knowing Pat Williams. I think, us here at the Six Man Show, we're going to do our best to never, make sure people, forget who that is. But one thing I saw on social media this week, which I think is a fantastic idea, is talking about a Pat Williams statue outside of Kia Center. Now, a lot of people think statues, they think players, but if someone's going to get a statue in Orlando first, I personally think Pat Williams would be an amazing statue to have, the first statue outside of Kia. I think it's great. Especially, as you said, a way for the next generation to recognize like why this place exists, why this team exists. It's really on the shoulders of this guy. Other people too. But, it was his vision, his mindset,
I
his
love that.
leadership that kind of made it happen.
All
I think
right.
it'd be awesome.
Two ideas. All right. I mean, if it's going to be outside, it's probably got to be him kissing the lottery ball, right? That's the
Sign me
iconic
up.
image.
Sign me up.
Or and this is kind of Walt Disney, but Pat loved Walt Disney. We do a statue of him at the end of the escalator, shake, right, shaking hands as you walk by, and then people can take
Oh,
pictures. I'm just spitballing it. It would
You're
just
getting me emotional.
I love that. That's a great one. Or if it's going to be outside, it's the ping pong balls, and then right next to it, it's like the little the community library thing where people can put books in and take them out, and it just becomes part of the
oh,
community.
I love
There's
that.
a lot of options, a lot of options.
I
So I
love
think the Magic
that.
need to get on that. I think both of those. I love that idea at the escalators.
Pat used to
That'd be
read at red lights.
in the car.
Yes.
Dangerous.
It it wasn't dangerous because he was stopped. He
Right.
got honked at many times.
Yeah.
You're right. I don't know if I should be saying that publicly. No, he did, and we used to leave people. You can never miss him because he was always at RDV. I mean, like you want to talk about first one there, last one gone. Like Pat's Benz was always parked outside. And he would drive, you'd like sometimes I would pull out next to him going to lunch, and we'd be sitting at the same light. He would have his head in his lap reading books. And you don't know what the book was about. That was the best part. It could have been, he was reading about World War II, and he was reading about, you know, the Cincinnati Reds.
Jake, I just wanted to say thank you for one that social media post. That was a big reason why Kevin and I was like Jake would be a fantastic person to talk to, and then just also thank you for being willing to join the show and to talk about Pat and the way that you have. So yeah, I think you put it the best. We lost a giant in Pat Williams.
Yeah, he was. I appreciate you guys, first off, having me on. I appreciate you guys being kind of dedicated to making sure that younger people and new Magic fans know who Pat was. Obviously, why he was so important. I think that part is going to be sort of easy. Like, hey, look, there's not a team. None of us are here. Like he did all of it, basically, to get all this here. But you guys both mentioned it. I think both your stories. John, about the personal touch, that is a throwback to what he needed to back when Orlando was a smaller town, and what he needed to do, which was basically pound the pavement to get people to sign up for the season ticket deposits to get the team in the first place. But it's exactly what he did with all the interns, right? He would just walk around and just talk to people, and he knew that there was no replacing actually talking to somebody and actually listening to them and asking questions and being interested in them. And Dante, I don't know if you guys saw Dante's post, The greatest quote, he was Dante asked him, like, why are you so interested in other people? And he was like, I already know everything about myself. Like, that's what a great way to live. That's good stuff.
Well, Jake, we appreciate this conversation. And as always, we look forward to hearing your call on the broadcast here in the next couple of months, Jake. Thanks as always for taking the time.
All right, boys. Thanks. Be well.
Once again, a massive thank you to Jake for joining the show, as always, giving us his time, but also just his insight into Pat Williams and the person that he was. And our prayers continue to go out to Pat Williams' family, first and foremost, the entire Orlando Magic organization. I know there's so many people, Kevin, that we've had the great privilege of crossing paths with that are hurting and mourning right now. But also just Magic fans everywhere, just continued prayers. And, we lost Pat Williams. I don't really know what else to say.
Yeah. A legend, an icon. We kind of touched on it in the conversation with Jake, but just there was no one in the organization at any level that wasn't impacted by Pat Williams, whether it's people that have been there for all 35 years, David Steele or, whoever else, to people that have just been there for, an internship like Jake talked about, or, even like I saw Kendra Douglas post this week, that Pat Williams, kind of took the time to talk with her and like go through, some pointers and some leadership advice and all kinds of different things. And it's just like everyone in the organization was impacted by him in some way. Again, 1 year, 35 years doesn't matter. And again, it's just one of those guys, when you lose someone like that, at least for me, it makes me evaluate, like I mentioned to Jake, it makes me evaluate my life. How can I, maybe make a better impact on people? What kind of legacy do I get to leave when I'm done? Whether it's in a couple weeks during the surgery or whether it's years from now.
Grief.
I mean, I'm just saying, it's, for those who don't know, there's a 3% chance that I'm going to die in this surgery. Like it's gone up. This new surgery has 3% chance. It's very unlikely, but it is a thing. And so, especially now as I'm, in these weeks before the surgery, it makes you think about those kinds of things. And so, yeah, like leaving a legacy is important. And I think we all get to choose what ours is. And Pat made incredible, wise choices over the course of his life to where now so many people are celebrating, what he did, when he was here.
Magic fans, I would really just implore you all. I know Kevin and I are going to do our part, and obviously it's easier for us, given the platform that we have the privilege of using here a couple of times a week. But just don't let people forget about Pat Williams. Orlando wouldn't be what it is without Pat Williams. Like the city that we love and so many people live in, and the team that we all love to watch. Like none of it would have happened without Pat Williams. And just as important, to Kevin's point, to talk about the team and everything that he meant, but that dude made such an imprint on the world around him outside of basketball. And I just think it's incredibly important to share that and to try to remember that. And I just really thank Jake for jumping on. I mean, a few days after losing somebody that, he spent a lot of time around, didn't have to come on here and talk about it. I know it wasn't easy for him to do. So just appreciate him and, just do good in the world. Pat Williams did plenty of that and impacted everybody that he was around. So I know everyone will miss him.
Yep, absolutely. And I'd say that's a good takeaway, Magic fans. If there's one thing Pat would want us all to do good, treat people kindly, treat people the right way, and make a positive impact on this world.
Kevin, I don't think there's any better way that we could wrap this one up. So that is going to do it for this one. For Jonathan, I got to get good at doing this because I'm not saying Luke anymore. For Luke, nope. For Kevin Tucker, this has been Jonathan Osborne. You all have been listening to the Sixth Man Show, and we will catch you guys next time. See ya.
Thanks for listening to the Sixth Man Show. Be sure to subscribe on iTunes and Spotify to get new episodes downloaded directly to your phone. If you enjoyed the show, please take a minute to give us a 5-star rating and a review. It helps out the show a lot. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Sixth Man Show. We'll catch you guys next time. Go Magic!